Danny Murtaugh.
You want to hear that story about that?
Please.
We were playing Pittsburgh, and it was a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it was Thursday, and there was nothing doing around the house in Philadelphia. And he said, Nate, let's take a ride up to Pittsburgh. We'll stay a day early. We're taking a movie in the night, checking a hotel, and we'll rest. I said, fine. So we started out, it was about 11 o'clock, and we're going up to Pittsburgh, which is about 320 miles. And at that time, I had a 59 Pontiac convertible coupe, and Larry loved that car. He liked to press the buttons, the top to go up and the top to go down, and wouldn't let me drive. And we're driving along the turnpike, and we stopped for a cup of coffee. We stopped in the Howard Johnson to get a cup of coffee, and I get the newspaper, and I'm reading the newspaper. I said, oh, my God, Larry, we should have started out a little earlier. He says, why? I says, the Phillies are playing Pittsburgh today. Now, there was the Pittsburgh was had needed one game out of 5 or 6 games to win the pennant. The Phillies were in last place. So he says, we'll see at least 7 innings. I says, okay. Presses his foot on the gas and is doing 80, 85 with my car. No longer, we don't go about 10 minutes and the state troopers coming with the sirens. Larry says, Nate, keep your mouth shut. I'll handle the whole thing. I said, okay. He said, no, remember, keep shut. I said, okay. I said, remember, it's my car and I'm going to get a ticket. He says, I'll take care of it. I said, okay. The trooper pulls us over and he says to the trooper, says, where the heck do you think you're going? He says, I'm going out to Pittsburgh. He says, to throw the ball in for the opening of the game. He says, you're tying me up. I said, you must not be a baseball player. He looked at him and says, oh, you're Larry the Three Stooges. He says, yes, I am. He says, don't talk to me. He says, leave me alone. He says, I got to get up to Pittsburgh. They're waiting for me. He says, well, got any pictures I can give my kids? I pulled out a few pictures. I gave him a few pictures. And he says, follow me. He says, and when we get up to a certain area, he says, there'll be another trooper coming out. He says, when he comes out, you follow him. He'll take you right into the ballpark. Well, the trooper put a siren on. We're doing 85 now. We're coming up. We're doing about 40 miles. About 40 miles, another state trooper comes out with his siren blowing, and we're following him in. Well, we get into, it's Forbes Field, yeah, in Pittsburgh. We get up there. The barricades are there. Larry says to the state trooper, open the barricades. The trooper said, what? He says, I said, open them up. We're coming in. Larry takes my, I said, Larry, you're coming in with my car. What are you going to do? He said, don't worry about it. We pull up to the door. Larry takes the keys. He throws it to one of the troopers. He says, park the car. I said, wait a minute. This is my car. I said, you're throwing my keys. He said, don't worry about it. Don't leave me alone. Trooper goes and parks the car. Larry walks up to the door, knocks on the door, and he says, 2 tickets for Larry Fine. I walks in here. He says, I'm sorry, Mr. Fine, there's no tickets for you. He says, you tell Danny Murtaugh to take his 2 tickets and stick them. And you know where I mean. So somebody inside heard it. And they said, wait a minute, Mr. Fine, wait a minute. Come on in. So we go in, we sit in Danny Murtaugh's box. And the Phillies were in last place, as I told you before. In the beginning of the 7th inning, I'm a Phillies fan, whether they're last place or not. I'm a Phillies fan. I'm from Philadelphia. And I stand up. I'm the only one standing up for the beginning of the 7th inning, for the 7th inning stretch. And in Danny Murtaugh's box, rooting for the Phillies. Can you imagine how stupid I was? Larry took my jacket, pulled it down. In fact, he tore my jacket. He says, stupid, he said, you're in Danny Murtaugh's box. Then, in between innings, Danny Murtaugh was at the bullpen, at the dugout, rather. And Larry told him what happened. He said, don't worry about it. Now, after the show, we went downstairs. After the ball game, we went downstairs to the dressing room. And Larry says to Danny, do you want me to cheer up the boys a little bit, give them a little my shtick? He says, no, they're downhearted. The Phillies beat them. The last game of the series, he says, but they're coming back tomorrow, he says. He says, how about coming in tomorrow? He says, and cheer him up before the game. He says, oh, we came back. And in the headlines in the paper, it says, Larry Fine is coming to cheer up the Pittsburgh Pirates. And they won the next day. They won the pennant. We always had fun. In the dressing room, we played cards. We didn't know what to do. You stand around, you don't know what to do. Take a shower, they do this. They play cards. They read a lot. Mo read a lot. Larry read a lot. Joe and I played cards. And then they would interfere with our card game, and we let them play cards, and Joe and I would kibitz around. We were playing, I think it was Baltimore, yeah. And we never ate dinner before showtime because they never ate, because jumping around and dancing around and everything else, it was too much. So they would eat after showtime. This time it was in Baltimore. It was about 11 o'clock at night. We went out to have dinner, and Larry says, Nate, I'm so tired. He says, let's sit all the way in the back of the restaurant. He said, we'll sit all the way in the back so I won't have to sign autographs. Because he never turned anybody down from signing an autograph. Never. And in fact, they used to pull a fork out of his hand while he was eating, and he would still sign an autograph. So we went in all the way in the back, in the last booth, and we're having dinner. And the waitress coming by, and I don't know if you know what I'm bringing out. They have trays of glasses, like 36 glasses to a tray. And she was carrying about 5 trays. Now, Larry's voice was a very distinct voice, if you know. And she was going by, the waitress was going by, putting the glasses behind, and Larry was talking to me, and she turns around. She says, Larry, the Three Stooges, and all the glasses dropped, the whole thing, glass all over our food and everything. He thought he was just a ham. He says, I don't know what people are doing. You know, they're so happy to see me. In fact, when they went into Pittsburgh for the first time, when they came east, they were on a train. At that time, they were riding trains. And when they were pulling into Pittsburgh Station, Larry looked out the window, and there was people, thousands of people waiting. So he said to Mo, you've been in the dining room. Is there any VIP on, VIP in the dining room? He said, no, I didn't see anybody. He said, there must be somebody, some VIP here. And when he got off the train, it was for the Stooges, and I think they pretty near fainted away, all 3 of them. They never realized that there was thousands of people waiting for the Stooges to come in, because they were playing the Holiday House in Monroeville, which is right outside of Pittsburgh. And he advertised that the Stooges were coming, and this is what happened. And this was the start of the Stooges comeback. That was his livelihood. Oh, well, I seen Mo get cracked too by Larry. I'll tell you. And Mo used to go out when he played the acts, and he would go out and first say to the children, now look, children, we do the cracking of the eyes and everything else, but it's a trick. And we hit somebody with a hammer. He says, look, here's the hammer, it's soft. See, it's rubber and everything else. And this is what he started off. Then they go into the act to tell the children never to try it when their sisters or their brothers, because, you know, it was a couple of times they got it written that the one kid, 5 years old, hit his sister, which she was 18 months old, and hit her in the eye and tried to do the Mo stuff. So they always practiced and told them not to. This time, Mo went out to the microphone, was going to say something, and he just froze. Absolutely froze, didn't say a word. And Larry picked it up from backstage, and this happens a lot of times. And Larry would walk out, run out there, you know, and pick it up and say to the children, children, you want to see something different? And they'd all holler, yeah. And Larry took his hand, crack right across Mo's face. And I mean, hit him. And he got right out of it. And they thought it was part of the act. Everybody thought it was, but that's professionals. Know when to do something like that. And I seen Larry too. We were in Hawaii, and what's his name from Hawaii, who sings Blowing Bubbles, what's his name?
Don Ho.
What?
Don Ho.
Don Ho. Never heard of Don Ho in my life. He never heard of Don Ho. We never heard of Don Ho. A phone call comes in, we're playing at the Civic Center there, and Don Ho calls. Didn't know who he was. And he says, look, I'm local here. I have my show in that local here, and I have 3 children. At that time, he had 3 children. He says, and I'd like to send them over. Would you give them an autograph? See? And they called me to the phone because I answer the phone all the time. I says, all right, tell them to go backstage. He says, and knock on the door and tell me who you are, and I'll get you the autographs. So I got the autographs, and I waited for the kids. And the kids came over, and I says, come on in. I took them into the dressing room, and the boys were quiet then. They were poking the kids, you know, fooling with the kids and everything, happy. About an hour later, a phone call comes. This is Don Ho. I want to thank you for told me, and he says, I want the boys and you and your wife, my wife was there at the time, come over and see the show. They never heard of Don Ho, neither did I. So Larry said, no, we won't go. So Lila said to him, come on, let's go, Larry. What do we got to lose? Go over to the nightclub. Okay. 3 of us go over, and soldiers were lined up like you never saw there going to his nightclub. It was an R&R, and everything. And he sat us down, put us in a beautiful nightclub, gorgeous. And we sat right in front of stage. And Don Ho comes out, and he says, I never do this in my life, he says, because I don't want anybody to take the act away from me. He says, but I got somebody here from the States and everything else. And he introduces Larry, see, Larry the Three Stooges, one of my fans. And Larry just sat there and froze. Lila was on one side and I was on the other side. We put our hand under his backside and pushed him up. Then he stood up. He was just embarrassed. He couldn't believe it. And then Don Ho brought him up on stage. And he was singing to him. But then he was relaxed already. See, he got relaxed. But these things happen. We were playing Hershey, and that's in Pennsylvania. And we were going to town, Larry and I, and Mo said to me, Nate, would you get me a bottle of bourbon? He says, you know anything all about bourbon? He says, you had 3 liquor stores. I said, yeah, all right, I'll get you a bottle of bourbon. And we walked in the liquor store there in Hershey. And you can't return anything in a state store. And this Old Forester, Granddad, all that, for $12, $13 a bottle. And this bottle, I saw a bottle of bourbon for $4.50. So I said, I'm going to get that for Mo. So he said, no, Larry said, don't you dare. He said, he'll never take that bottle. He says, he don't want that crap. I said, Larry, did he ask you to get it or me? He said, you. I said, then I'll buy it. He said, you're going to get stuck with it. He ain't going to take it. I said, I'll buy it. In fact, I'll take 2 bottles. Oh my God, you're putting yourself out of. So I bought 2 bottles. It was $4.50. I take it back to Mo, and I knew how to handle Mo. I said, Mo, I just bought you the best bargain in the world. He said, what is it, Nate? I said, I bought you 2 bottles of bourbon, not 1, 2, and I'll tell you why. They're selling the Old Forester and the Granddad for like $12, $13. This one was $4.50. Whether they made a mistake or they discontinued, I don't know. But I sold this. He says, let me taste it. Taste it. Jesus, my God, it's terrific. Go get me another bottle. Larry freaking went down to the ground. I says, see, Larry, you make a bargain for Mo, he'll buy it. Give him any bargain, he'll buy it. But we played all over. I don't remember any little town, big towns, little. Well, one little story. I think it was Warren, Ohio. I'm pretty sure. And they did a percentage act. They did a percentage deal. Percentage of the gate. So, which was a lot of times they got paid so much salary and everything, expenses included. This one was percentage. They figured they'd make more money. And the guy that booked them all around one-night stands. So we were in Warren, Ohio. Going to Warren, Ohio, and there's 2 theaters. One, and I think they were showing in that one, it was either Hercules and the Three Stooges or Snow White and the Three Stooges, and the Three Stooges in person. For the same price as the theater next door was showing a cowboy picture. All right. Show starts and everything. Maybe 8 or 10 people in the whole audience. The whole audience. And I mean, they're doing the whole act to 8 or 10 people, which was ridiculous, you know. And they were a percentage hit. So the next show, Larry says, Nate, do me a favor. Go next door, pay your way in and see what's doing next door. I want to see what's doing next door. I go in next door, and it's jammed. 2 cowboy pictures are playing. The same prices there with the Stooges. Jammed. I went around to check around. I find out that nobody knew who the Stooges were. It was never shown in that particular town. So who knew what the Stooges were? Nobody knew what the Stooges were. So the guy that booked them didn't even know about these things. And I made twice as much money as they did. They lost money. Mo was very thrifty, invested a lot of money, invested in here, invested here, and made money. And Larry spent his money. And I'm being honest. He supported his mother, he supported his sister, he supported Mabel's sisters, 10 sisters and brothers. Helped everybody, helped everybody. I don't know if I told you this story. He was walking along the boardwalk one time with me. There was a guy begging with a cup and everything, slobbering from the mouth, a derelict and everything. We passed by this guy. Larry says, wait a minute, I know that guy. I went, Larry, come on, let's go. He said, wait a minute, Nate, I know that guy. I want to see. So he walks back, he says, are you so-and-so and so-and-so that we used to work in the Grand Theater in New York? We need a stagehand there? The guy says, yes, that's me. He says, you remember me? I'm Larry of the Three Stooges. He says, yeah. He says, I think I know you. And Larry says, you're holding? You know, when he says you're holding, you got any money? And the guy's got he said, if I'm holding, you think I would be holding the scan, begging? Larry put his hand in his pocket, took out a $10 bill, threw it in there. I said, Larry, what was that for? He says, he was a stagehand. He says, and any time I ever wanted anything, coffee, always came back, Larry, you want a cup of coffee? You want me to get you this? You want me to get you that? He said, I remember it. He says, so it's a big deal. What am I going to do? Die because I gave him $10? Just the kind of guy he was. Larry was very good. Larry never introduced me as his brother-in-law. Never introduced me as his brother. He always say, this is my brother, Nate Budnick. And one time somebody said to him, Nate Budnick and you're Larry Fine? Did your mother have two different husbands? He said, look, do me a favor. That's my brother, Nate Budnick. I'm Larry Fine. Don't ask me no questions because it's a long story, and that was the end of it. And his wife would never call me her brother-in-law either, or call Lila his sister-in-law. That's my sister and that's my brother. And my daughter's sitting right there, and she'll tell you, she won't tell you now because I don't want her to interrupt the conversation, but she cried. Mabel was her best aunt. Mabel was the best aunt. It's the truth.
Check out the Stooge-O-Rama 3 DVD collection for more Stooge rarities.